Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. I'm calling them often overlooked miracles. Jesus did many miracles when he walked on earth among us. There were healings and exorcisms and miracles over nature. But some of them don't seem, well, quite as spectacular as some of the others. Some miracles we know quite well, turning water into wine, stilling the storm, walking on water, or healing the 10 lepers, or the paralytic let down through the roof. But other miracles, perhaps they don't show up in the scriptures we read on Sundays, or just don't grab our attention in the same way. So I want to spend our time this week looking at some of these lesser known miracles. The miracle we are looking at today is a bit like that. In fact, it's the first healing miracle that Jesus does, so we ought to pay attention. Jesus is beginning his ministry, and Peter invites him to his house where his mother-in-law had a fever. As the Gospel of Mark tells it, as soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. It's as simple as that. One of the intriguing things about the Gospel of Mark is that many of the miracles Jesus does involve people who are isolated away from others. It might be hard to remember now, but maybe we got a small taste of what that is like during the pandemic when we had to be isolated away from each other. Because of her fever, this woman had been isolated away from others, but even more, she was isolated away from her role in society. As the eldest woman in that house, the role she was expected to play was to be the hostess in charge when guests came. The fever prevented her from doing that. This woman was isolated not just from society, but cut off from being who she thought she should be. But Jesus doesn't just heal. Jesus restores. Jesus brings her to wholeness so that she can become again the person she knows and wants to be. And Jesus heals us and restores us too. Whatever our isolation is, Jesus restores us, and we will know new life. I remember in my younger days smirking a little bit at this miracle because here a whole group of guys shows up at a house and it looks like Jesus heals a woman so she can fix them a meal. It just didn't seem right in my eyes at the time. But since then, I have come to see this miracle in a different light, and it has become one of my favorites. Jesus healed her, and she responded in service to others. And I think loving service should be the reaction each of us has to God acting in our lives. God acts. God heals. God restores. And we respond in loving service to God and our neighbors. It's a small little story in the Gospel of Mark. It's our very own story. It's our very own calling. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.